What's going on, everyone? How's everyone doing today? Jack Rizzo here with you today. I just wanted to come on here and make a short video just to discuss the passing of Indianapolis Colts owner Jim Irsay. Especially considering that I'm a Colts fan. I just wanted to give you guys a little more insight into Jim Irsay and what he personally meant to me as a lifelong Colts fan, because I feel like Mr. Irsay was one of the most understood people in the National Football League. Let's get right into it. So last night, the Indianapolis Colts put out a statement saying that longtime owner, chairman, CEO Jim Irsay passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 65. He was 3 weeks away from his 66th birthday. Jim Irsay had been the principal owner of the Indianapolis Colts since 1997. He took over for his father, Robert, who passed away in 97. Now, Robert had taken over ownership of the Colts in 1972, when they were in Baltimore. Then when the Colts moved to Indianapolis in 1984, Jim Irsay became the youngest general manager in the NFL at 24. And then in 1997, Jim Irsay became the youngest owner in the NFL at 37 years old after his father, Robert, had passed away. Now, Mr. Irsay certainly did not step into an easy job with the Colts. It was certainly a tough one for him to step into, considering that the first 15 years in Indianapolis did not go very well. The Colts were picking top 5 in the draft every year, and outside of their appearance in the 95 AFC Championship game against the Steelers when Jim Harbaugh was there, not much went right for Indianapolis. They were having losing seasons. There were rumors that they might relocate again, but when Jim Irsay came in, everything just turned around. Just a year after he had taken over his ownership, the Colts drafted Peyton Manning, and soon after, the Colts went from just some forgotten about Midwestern NFL team to a juggernaut in the AFC. Just a decade after Jim Irsay became owner, the Colts were hoisting their first Super Bowl since moving to Indianapolis. And then shortly after that, the Colts got a brand new stadium, Lucas Oil Stadium. And while everyone credits Peyton Manning for that stadium getting built, Jim Irsay at the same time was the architect behind the building. That's something I saw last night, and it really did hit home because we all give credit to Peyton for that stadium being built, but it was also Jim Irsay doing that as well. So after that, obviously the last 15 years of Mr. Irsay's life were certainly a little rough, at least in terms of his ownership of the Colts. After Peyton Manning left in 2011, things certainly went downhill. The Colts were a little up and down over the years. Obviously, Andrew Luck was great when he was on the field, but had some injuries, retired early. And the last 5 years haven't gone as well. But at the same time, though, there's no denying the fact that Jim Irsay's love for the Colts never, ever went down. He loved the Colts from the time his father became the owner all the way through his last days on this earth. Now, Jim Irsay was certainly an interesting person. I think he was very misunderstood in the media. I mean, the media would always say crazy things about him, and so maybe he wasn't the most loved person in the media, but from what I've seen the last couple of days, in terms of the NFL executives, in terms of the Colts organization, in terms of the Colts players, in terms of the Colts fans, in terms of the entire state of Indiana, and most NFL fans, Jim Irsay was a beloved figure. Obviously, he was a great owner. I mean, I think one of the main things to point to that is the fact that so many Colts veterans, number one, they've already paid tribute to Mr. Irsay since his passing, including Peyton Manning, Pat McAfee, lots of others. And number two, most star players that the Colts drafted were homegrown players, and almost all of them signed either second, maybe even third or fourth contracts with the Colts. We've seen so many veterans the last couple of years. The Colts don't have many star players hit free agency, and I think a big reason for that is because of the fact that Jim Irsay made them feel so welcome and that they belonged in the Colts organization. And obviously, Jim has certainly made some interesting decisions, obviously. He cut Peyton Manning in 2011 after the Colts got the first overall pick and finished with the worst record in the league. He hired Jeff Saturday as interim coach in 2022. He certainly made some interesting decisions, but that doesn't, I feel like the media tried to spin it like Jim Irsay is this crazy person. What is he doing? But in reality, we all know that Jim Irsay really just wanted the best for his football team, and he clearly felt that these were the best decisions for his football team, and I commend him for that. Now, Jim obviously Jim was one of the most caring, from what we've seen, Jim Irsay was one of the most caring people in the world of the NFL. He was a tremendous mental health advocate. He, was very, very active on social media. He would hold contests basically several times a month where he would give out, free tickets, all expenses paid trips to Colts road games if they could get trivia questions right. He also was, very present at Colts training camp, other practices. He'd give out $100 bills to fans. And, he also pledged donations to things outside of football. Remember when he pledged $20 million to help remove Lolita the orca who lived in that Miami aquarium. She was going to be returned to her home in the Pacific Northwest. Obviously, she passed away before that could happen, but that was just one of the many things that Mr. Irsay gave money for. And it was just, he wasn't just kind with his wallet. He was kind with his personality as well. I don't think many people may not know this, but Jim Irsay was the first owner to publicly call for the removal of Dan Snyder, the longtime owner of the Washington Commanders. And I think that's certainly something that deserves a lot of respect. I mean, we've already seen what Washington has done since Dan Snyder left D.C., and I think the fact that Mr. Irsay took it upon himself to be the first to call him out, it really shows his passion and his care about integrity in the NFL. Now, as I was talking about before, Jim Irsay did all these great things. He was a great owner, cared about the fans, cared about the city, the state, the team, all that, and he was very generous with his donations off the field. But he's just very misunderstood because the media kind of characterized him as this crazy, crazy billionaire. Obviously Mr. Irsay had his off the field problems. He was arrested in March of 2014 for a DUI in Carmel, Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis. He said in an interview about a year and a half ago that he had been to rehab at least 15 times. He was very open about addiction, but the thing I find commendable is that despite the fact that he went through all these personal problems, it certainly affected him both physically and mentally. His love for the Colts and his love for other people never deteriorated. The Colts were always Jim Irsay's life. He wasn't like any of these other owners who who own other teams or have bigger investments than their sports teams. No, Jim Irsay's life was always about the Indianapolis Colts. And I think that's the reason why so many Colts fans loved him. Even though the Colts have been very inconsistent over the last decade or so, we just know that we have an owner who cares about us, cares about the players, the fans, his city. Obviously, he's done so much. He did so much for us over 25 years. You could say he probably saved the Colts from maybe relocating again. Got us, franchise quarterback, a brand new stadium, all these great players that we've had. And I am so incredibly grateful for Mr. Irsay and everything he did for the Indianapolis Colts. And obviously, I'm a lifelong Colts fan, right? I never met Mr. Irsay in person. I've never even been to a Colts game at Lucas Oil Stadium. But still, 750 miles away, I always felt his presence as a Colts fan, just watching the games, just always seeing him. He was always there to support them. He was always there at training camp, very active, always showing support for his team. And I certainly felt that as a Colts fan, even though I didn't live in Indiana, or I haven't lived in Indiana, I always felt like Jim Irsay cared about me and he cared about me being a Colts fan. That's something that made me feel very, very special. And it's obviously sad to see him go. We knew he had personal problems, but we didn't really know like he was doing this bad or anything. Like we didn't hear from anybody like, oh, like Jim Irsay's not doing well. It just happened. He just peacefully passed away in his sleep. And I'm glad it was peacefully. He didn't go through any pain or anything. Obviously, he went through a lot of life pain. So it's certainly just absolutely tragic. It's tragic for the Colts. It's tragic for the fans. It's tragic for the city of Indianapolis. And it's really tragic for the entire NFL, considering how much of a presence Jim Irsay was in the NFL community. I will say that we do lose sports owners quite frequently. I mean, we just lost the owner of the Bears, Virginia House McCaskey, passed away earlier this year. We've had other owners pass away in recent years. I don't think I've seen this much support for an owner after their passing than Jim Irsay. It is abundantly clear that Jim Irsay was loved by everyone that knew him personally. He did so much. I saw Jim Nantz tell a great story about him on the Rich Eisen show. Pat McAfee told great stories about him. I believe there's a former player who, after someone in his family passed away, Jim Irsay offered to pay for their funeral. He was just a good man who, despite the fact that he was far from an imperfect person, he certainly had, his issues off the field. But despite that, he was still just as kind and as generous as you could possibly be. He cared about the team very, very much. And it's obviously sad to see Mr. Irsay go. That's basically been the Colts' identity in Indianapolis. Most Colts fans will not remember the first 15 years in Indianapolis. Most are going to remember the last 25 years since Mr. Irsay has been the owner. So it's obviously very sad. So again, he was just 65. So incredibly, it's just absolutely tragic that we have lost Mr. Irsay at this point in time. but at the same time, his legacy, his memory will live on in the city of Indianapolis forever. Jim Irsay built up Indianapolis as a football city, and that is something that his family always has as a part of his legacy. Now, Mr. Irsay, again, he was 65 when he passed away. He leaves behind 3 daughters, Carly, Casey, and Kaylin. He also leaves behind 10 grandchildren, and it's not official yet, hasn't been reported, but it appears very likely that the oldest daughter, Carly Irsay Gordon, who is, I think, 43 or 44, she'll take over as the principal owner of the Indianapolis Colts. And that's something that Jim Irsay wanted. He had said many times that if he passes away, that he's handing the team down to his daughters. I do not expect them to sell the team at all. They want to continue this family legacy, which has now been passed down 3 generations from Robert to Jim, now to Carly. And it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. But one thing to take in mind from this is now it feels like for this entire upcoming 2025 Colts season, all we're going to be thinking about is Jim Irsay. We're hoping, obviously, we hope his presence stays in Indianapolis forever. He is a legend in the state of Indiana. The Colts would not be where they are right now without the boss man in charge. So I'm sure we'll see many, many tributes. I'm sure the week 1 game against Miami, there will be a big tribute for him. Throughout the season, there will be lots of tributes for Mr. Irsay. Again, he was 3 weeks away from his 66th birthday, and we're just going to have to see what happens. I will say, though, Jim Irsay's final tweet on his Twitter account, which came yesterday around noon, it was cheering on for the Pacers. And, of course, the Pacers had that miracle last night at MSG, that magical win over the New York Knicks. And it certainly feels like that Jim Irsay was very present in that game, and he allowed for the Pacers to win. So that's basically all I wanted to say. Just wanted to come on and honor Jim Irsay, tell you guys what it meant to me as a lifelong Colts fan to have Mr. Irsay as our owner. I thank you guys all for joining me. Join Eli for Sports with Mono and Mono on Saturday with Jim Monahan. Obviously, I also want to express my thoughts and condolences with them on the loss of Jim's brother, Steven. Very tragic there. I hope Jim is doing okay, and I offer my prayers and condolences to him. And then Eli and I will be back for the state playoffs next week. We'll see you then. Have a good night, everyone.